So
No worries.
Jason, if you end up getting frozen or have to bump off, you could always just try regular phone and that might work.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're all here. We'll call to order this meeting of the Easton Reading Region 9 Joint Policy Committee at 9:03 a.m. Members in attendance, John Stinson and Chris Parkin.
Good morning. I will call to order the special Region 9 Policy Committee meeting, May 6th at 9:03 a.m. Members in attendance are Sarah Lieberger, Cheryl Graziano, and Kathy Thompson.
Also in attendance is our superintendent, Dr. Jason McKinnon. The first item up is the approval of minutes for the April 18th, April 22nd, and April 29th, 2022 Policy Committee meetings. Unfortunately, we had a operational administrative snafu and the minutes weren't actually posted along with the agenda. So we're going to hold on that to make sure that we're fully compliant, and at a subsequent meeting, we'll make sure that they're both posted and on the agenda for approval. That'll take us to public comment. No members of the public being present. We'll move to committee member comment. Hearing none, we'll move into discussion and possible action. I know, the order here, we've got the policy review process, administrative updates, and model policy review, but I know Dr. McKinnon, I think, has a conflict at 9:30. So maybe if everyone's comfortable, we can give Dr. McKinnon the opportunity to provide any administrative updates.
Good morning, everyone. I was talking to Sarah earlier, and she mentioned that it might be nice to remind everyone that we have a community stakeholder group next Thursday. I sent out a reminder yesterday. We have 100 participants. Unfortunately, I was made aware that John Reed Middle School has a concert that night, which I didn't see in the original master calendar. So I think I'll address that in two ways. One is, I don't think I'm going to cancel a focus group that has over 100 people, because that's always, that's a pretty sizable N. So I'll either send out a follow-up survey that reflects what the two focus group questions were on next Thursday night, or I'll schedule an individual focus group session just for parents of John Reed as a kind of an add-on. So I'll address that in two ways. But that's the reminder. We've had great conversations with faculty, and I really look forward to having a conversation with the community members and stakeholders next Thursday.
Even if 100 people don't end up actually showing up, it still shows a tremendous interest in the work, which is really valuable.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to train some students to be focus group leaders. I think we'll probably start in the auditorium, and depending on actually our turnout, I may have to divide the group. Some students, some members go into the library, some members go into the cafeteria. I'm not quite sure. We may get more than 100 people turn up, but I'll train the focus group leaders so that it will work no matter what setting that we decide to use.
I love the idea of training the students to lead focus groups. I'm in the midst of spinning up a ton of focus groups with various clients, and I've got clients at sort of all the biggest companies in the world, and they are so excited to have their employees participate in these conversations and be able to give feedback on their experience. And we realized that one of the main blocking, so the only reason we weren't doing this before is because there wasn't someone who sort of had experience doing focus groups. So this is a real skill that's in high demand, and it's actually really fun. It's really fun to lead a focus group and allow people to kind of go beyond just that, like that surface level thing, and dig in and really get to the root of like, where do you want to be and where do you want to go? And I'm incredibly excited about this work.
Just not to keep us off topic, but just out of curiosity, do we have an idea of the mix of representatives that will be there? Like, is it school families, community members, Reading, Easton, any kind of insight on who might be there?
Yeah, we have, we did the RSVP with a Google form, and we will be able to sort the participants by school. That's one of the strategies we'll look at sample size and representation from each area. So I do know that. I do
Will
know
the focus groups be broken down by school, or will they be cross-pollinated?
they'll be cross-pollinated.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. All right. Thank you for the update, Dr. McKinnon. And I think on the policy review process and the model policy review, I don't know that we have on our agenda, although we certainly, or in our sort of body of work to do any specific model policies. Although we may jump into those. I think primarily we're here to talk about the review process. Is that accurate? Sort of which policies we're considering and how we make sure that we can, as much as possible, harmonize the work going on.
Would you like me to report as to what the Reading Board accomplished on Tuesday?
Yes, please.
So the Reading Board had its regular meeting on Tuesday, and in the interest of putting us in a position where all three boards could have completed a first reading in time for the tri-board on May 24th, with a little bit of urgency, we adopted for our first reading a large swath of policies. And what I presented to the board was a Schedule A for our first reading, which is the Shipment and Goodwin policies, with the exception of those that I believe were on slide 7, the let's wait for it slides.
Yep.
As well as with the exception of the Shipment policies that we flat rejected, like the dress code policy.
Yeah.
Then I presented a Schedule B, and the Schedule B included the policies that we wished to retain for right now. And we first read the repeal of all policies except for those. And so this is the first read to repeal schedule. And so
This
basically
is the exception list.
This is the exception list. So you'll note it's all the bylaws, everything to do with Title IX, everything to do with data protection, student privacy, transportation, procurement, and hiring, which were basically the fields that we decided all needed to wait. And everybody's mileage is going to vary a little bit as to what this list looks like, because we all have slightly different numbering and slightly different policies in these fields. But as a first step, we need to first read, repeal everything except for these. This committee is going to have to come to some sort of joint recommendation as to what to do with the mismatch here, particularly if we decide to keep permanently some of these policies. But that's less of a concern for the immediate moment. This is the Schedule A first read to adopt. This is just the names of the policies right down the line that were on the lists except for the wait. And this includes policies for which we said we needed additional clarification from Shipment and Goodwin. And the reason we did that is on the assumption that we can continue to work in that direction, and we can try to have that resolution between a first and second read. And if we don't get that resolution between now and May 24th, it's no harm, no foul. We just don't bring all of the policies to a second read on May 24th. We hold back the 5, 6, 10, whatever it ends up being, for which we still have questions. And that becomes a second batch of second reads, whether it's in June or July, or hopefully not any later than that.
So this, I think this is the same thing we're doing. I went into our spreadsheet and I said, filter out, give me all the policies from the Shipment book, except the ones where we said we were going to wait because it's complicated, and except for the ones that we said we reject. And so that's the list that I sent to my board in preparation for our first reading next Tuesday. And then same thing, the items on slide 7, I said, hey, our current policies related to these policies are the ones that we're going to retain.
Not forever, but just for now.
Right, exactly, for now. And I think that gives us the most flexibility, because to your point, we're going to be able to say, if between first and second reading, we say, you know what, there's another one of the Shipment that we want to, not adopt right now, or another 10 that we want to not adopt right now. Or in the other direction, we say that there's there are more of our policies that we want to retain, we have that flexibility to simply not move those specific policies forward in second reading. So this is basically saying like, hey, here's the universe. We're giving people a really good idea of where we're heading with and allowing for conversation during the board meetings and sort of deliberations on these policies.
It's a
that
speak
could
now or
change
forever hold your peace kind of moment. Like,
Yeah, right.
we're telling you our intent is to repeal all of this stuff. There's 190 of them.
Right.
If you want to go look through them and find things that you find near and dear, do that, and we can have a conversation about it. And you might be right, and we might end up retaining it. And all of those are fine outcomes. We're not here to dictate an outcome. We're here to suggest.
Right. Yeah, I really like the sort of flexibility and yet focus on like, we're actually going to do this. Like, we're actually going to sort of make some progress in a meaningful way here.
Got you. And I think we're right along there with you in the same mindset, the same alignment in terms of the list that you had shown, Chris, we basically just mapped them out to the different policies that they are for Region 9, but we're in full alignment. And I feel the same way too. We may get to that point where in between first and second, people within our board are like, well, wait, there's this one policy that I had worked really hard on however many years ago or in the last 2 years, and we're not discussing it.
Right.
We bring it back to the table. We discuss, we deliberate as a board, and then we make that choice.
Right.
I think it's quite likely we've missed something. And if somebody, brings it to our attention, great.
Mhm.
Yep. That's right.
We're human. Yep.
Right. And if it still doesn't get caught between first, second, and sort of the sort of approval, we still have a mechanism. We can always go back and resuscitate, if need be. And we know the process, and we've got a great group of people together who can make that happen efficiently.
But we're well on our way to getting this to a point where we can hit the summer with the administration knowing what's been changed.
Yeah. And I actually have, I sent out the, hey, here's the big things we're going to be doing in the meeting next week, for kind of pre-reading stuff for my board. And I included in the email, the list and the links to all the policies, and thought, I don't know, how engaged are people going to be? And, somebody was saying that they were going to need to be remote, but I'll be on all weekend reading through these policies. I'm like, all right, now, do we really have we gotten to that level? Do we have real engagement on policy?
And what did John Stinson say to you, John?
It wasn't me, I swear. It was somebody else. So, all right.
Just for full transparency, I presented our list to Jason and just got feedback from him yesterday saying that we're good to go. He's reviewed everything for Region 9. And so that'll be our next step, will be to get it in front of our board as well.
Yeah, that's great. So do we think that we're actually going to be in the May 24th tri-board, that this will be a major topic, that this will be a second reading and possibly approval?
Well, just as a point of procedure, if we go to first for Region 9 on May 17th, if we go to first reading, can we go to second reading that quickly? I think it needs to be more time.
I think
by our policy.
I think procedurally, it's got to be regular meeting to regular meeting.
And they're both regular meetings.
Your bylaws? I don't know that it's in each of our bylaws that's the case, but let's just say that your bylaws state that it has to be a regular meeting. Both of those are regular meetings.
Yes.
So, but that's aside from the sort of practical and sort of spirit of the idea of having some time for people to digest.
Mm-hmm.
So from a sort of rules of the road perspective, I think my take on it is you're actually good because those are in fact two regular meetings. Is that
and you
true?
already had a 0.5 reading in April.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. I think that, but the bigger question about the spirit of the intent of having them at two regular meetings, the spirit of that was to have time between for people to digest and react. My point of view, and it's actually that's why I sent the links to all the policies as a part of giving my board a heads up that, hey, first reading. It's very common that in a first reading, that people haven't gone through with a fine tooth comb and sort of read everything. I've been pushing really hard and sort of saying to my board, like, there's a lot here. You can do it in probably 5 hours. You can get through all this content, but you don't want to do that in one sitting.
Because I'm getting to just from in the spirit of, and I'm not trying to slow anything down in any way, but do potentially maybe we want to do Region 9 wants to do what you sound like you just did and get this to our board now. And so that on our regular board meeting, we go to first reading, but then by the tri-board meeting, everybody's had it much longer than that. There's only a few days between our board meeting and the tri-board meeting.
I think that's exactly my intent. And like, there's no reason why Sarah, as the chair of the Region 9 policy committee, couldn't say, hey, everyone, I know we had this conversation, and I know I'm sure they've already received sort of the links to review these, but just like a reminder, right, that the timeline that we're operating under is tight. And so there may be a limited amount of time between first and second reading. Our estimates have it somewhere between 5 and 6 hours to read through all this policy. It would be, here are the links again, please take the time, to take 30 minutes here and there to do this.
All members of all boards have access to the S&G folder.
Correct.
I have for quite a while at this point.
Along with the comments that we tagged them with when we reviewed. So like that's a lot of context, a lot of opportunity.
So it sounds like we're all doing the same thing, slightly different timing, but we're all in the same mode here. I raised 2 specific policy questions that we got a response from Shipment and Goodwin on, that I think we were all in the same place as to going forward with the recommended revisions per Shipment and Goodwin. And my question is, it was curricular exemptions, which was the timing of the notification by parents, and then the FERPA opt-in language versus opt-out. And Shipment provided suggested language to modify both of those policies. Do we want those 2? And those seemed to be, in my view, like when I was going through it, those seemed to be the 2 that had specific approved revisions from Shipment. Do we want those policies to go to first reading?
So what Chris reviewed on Tuesday with his board, I would suggest we sort of keep to that. But I think at least one of those, we made the revision last Friday during our meeting, because we had it, and I remember going in and not wanting to say, oh, I'll do this later.
Right.
And we did it during the call and updated that. And so I suspect that what Chris reviewed did include that.
Can I suggest that we take the Shipment and Goodwin model policy folder right now?
Yeah.
Copy it.
Yeah.
Call the current one, first read,
yeah,
and then move into the second one and take any revisions we're going to make and put them into the second one. And if and when we make revisions to any of these policies, change the file name to edited.
Yeah.
Because it was a fair request made from my board of, how will I know what you all have changed between first and second reading without going line by line? And I said, it would be incumbent upon us to tell you, because it's unfair to make you go hunt and peck between 80 policies.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just looking for a process that we can know what policies we're changing, what we're not. And so I would lock the first ones.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a folder here that are the Shipment and Goodwin. Sorry, was somebody trying to say something?
I was just going to ask, so I guess that's really, so Chris, when you went to your board meeting, did you make any revisions to the Shipment policies based on the Shipment comments, or did you submit the original policies?
The policies that were first read were the policies as this committee had pushed them through on Friday. So any changes that were made Friday were the last changes that were made, and it became locked to my board at that point, as far as first read is concerned.
Oh, okay.
We can go back and look. I know you mentioned 2 revisions, suggested language that Shipment provided to us. At least one of those, I know we did, because we did it last Friday. So that's in there. We just have to go back and see that second one. Was that also in there?
There's nothing per se wrong with you know, Region 9 bring a slightly revised thing to a first read. We're all going to move that to a second read anyway.
Yeah,
I just
that's
don't want to have too many forks in the road that create the second reading where it's, well, the second reading for Reading changes this to that, but it doesn't change anything on Region 9. And it's just like,
Agreed.
Right.
Right. We don't want to create too much confusion, but
Right.
one or
plenty of
two.
confusion in the room without it. That's
Yeah, agreed. So I was, the last time we talked about this, which I think was last Friday, I was really clear-eyed about how I wanted to sort of copy this over. So I'm just doing that right now as I copy this folder, which it looks like they don't want me to copy a whole folder here.
Well, John, if you can't do it, no one can.
I can, you know what I'll do? I'll go to Mr. Google, and Mr. Google, copy a drive folder?
I don't know.
Question.
Sometimes I think that John has met his match with Sarah Scrofani's Google skills.
I love it. I like it's one of my favorite things when I go, oh yeah, I don't think you can do that. She's like, no. You click here and you click there. I'm like, yes. She's wonderful. Or the better one is like, oh, you know what you want to do? Do this and do this and do this and do this. She's like, oh, I did that, but then I did this. She's so great.
She showed me yesterday how to send an email. So you basically create a draft in Google and you send a draft email from the Google Doc, which was pretty cool. A new feature.
Oh, I love new features. and you know,
Sarah,
when, sorry, go ahead.
While John's working on the folder, you mentioned that Gwen or Dory provided an update to you yesterday, and it was a chart that, you know, you have a list of policies for Region 9 that you were temporarily maintaining.
Yes.
And they got back to you and said, and gave some advice on some of your your retention ideas.
Yes.
And I'm looking at that document right now, and there are some policies that they're saying, you know, this policy is not retired, this policy is not required and may be repealed. So they're very clear, like, you know, this is an action, you don't need this policy. On some of them, they're saying, if you adopt if you're retaining this particular policy, then do not adopt the corresponding shipment policy.
Yep.
Right.
But have you, where are you with that?
I've pulled all those shipment policies out on the Reading side. We didn't advance for a first reading the policy with respect to non-certified and certified hiring, for example, because we were retaining the personnel policy that existed.
All right. So,
exactly.
So anything that says, you know, if you're retaining that, then don't adopt the shipment you took care of.
Basically, if it touched one field, we didn't advance the policy on that field.
Okay, good. And then what about the specific policies that they're basically saying, you know, these are the policies that are on your maintenance list. They're not required. They may be repealed. Did you make a decision on those?
We have not, because we just got it. So the three of us haven't discussed amongst ourselves. Because we didn't know that they were going to come back, or we didn't assume that they would come back with that response. So we didn't have a, pre-existing plan in place for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it either requires decision-making today, or we can wait to the end of this or discuss some of it and deliberate, and then we can come back to it another time if we need to, but we do kind of need to figure this out.
It feels to me like this is all a phase 2, because if we're basically saying anything to do with transportation, we're not touching because we haven't come down and agreed on the shipment transportation policy. So instead of getting into, well, I'm going to pull out the driver safety policy because Shipment says we don't need it. That's make work, because eventually we're going to have to decide which transportation suite we're going with as far as policies are concerned. And if we decide we're not taking Shipment, then we need to actually look at the existing one, and we're probably going to refine and update that anyway. So I don't see much value in getting too lost in these weeds, because the first phase here is the wholesale replacement of, adopt 60 policies to replace 160. And then narrow the focus into substantively, here are the 3 or 4 knotty areas. How are we going to resolve these? And I don't expect, for example, the transportation policy that's on the books is going to exist for much, much longer, but it just requires additional deliberation and understanding of the shipment policy before we can get there.
Okay. I have to jump off at 9:30. So is there anything that you need, or would you like to circle back with me once you may have this discussion?
I can circle back with you. I think that's fine.
Okay,
Sure. Thank you for your time today.
thank you.
I think I've got it.
It was a good filibuster while John was playing with his computer.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I needed to download the Google Drive app. And it looks like the Google Drive app is going to allow us to do this. So just bear with me.
Cheryl and Kathy, while John is working on that, did you have any additional questions regarding what Shipment and Goodman just sent to us yesterday? Are you kind of thinking the same thing? This is something that still requires extensive deliberation and consideration, and we should just probably keep things the same and go to our first read as planned?
I definitely agree. These are parking lot issues to me. And then whatever we can not change, kind of freeze to align with what Chris already advanced and what John is going to or will advance shortly. That's easier. It just, there's a lot that we're collectively advancing for first and second read. So there's no reason why we need to complicate that process, because I think the tri-board discussion is going to be robust as it is.
Mhm.
We should try to get the easy win. And the more of
Right.
these thorny issues you include in the list, the more you're threatening to derail the whole process.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there were only, I think we should be consistent with what Chris has submitted so that we don't have multiple first reads out there and go from there is my view. So whatever, when the Reading board members click on the link, we should every board member should go to the same policy version.
The only way that the first read is going to be different is the exemption list on repealing, because
Yes.
the policies are slightly different already.
Yes, and we did, when Cheryl, Sarah, and I met the other day, we had that same discussion because our numbers don't align. Sometimes we have 3 policies, you only had 1. So that is the only difference we came up with.
Okay, great. I tend to feel the exact same way about this discussion, and I just wanted to make sure that we all had the chance to talk it through. Similarly, I feel like we have such a great list that we're going to bring forth in our adopt, and I think that shows our alignment, and if we can get the majority of those through, I feel like that's a huge success. Then we've got this smaller list that was complicated. And so my fear would be that if we bring forth this complicated pile, that's just going to muddy the waters. And I kind of want to keep this initial process simple so we can get things through. Now, this complicated group, thanks, Jason. Take care. Have a good weekend. This complicated group, I think it would make sense for us to, work towards this, whether it's June, July, and potentially we're going to have those new policies from Shipment and Goodwin to work through in July anyway, right? So we could add them to these, then we bring this forth in a new batch. So that seems to make the most sense to me. I'm following John here.
Just a timing. I thought that Dory had said the 4 new policies, I think she mentioned, would have to be adopted by July. I thought by July 1st, they had to be.
Yeah, there are certain laws that require policies be adopted by July 1st.
Mhm.
Small spoiler here, we have had many statutes require policies be adopted, and that hasn't happened for many years. The administration still will comply with the law, etc. Obviously, the closer we can get to being compliant, the better. And obviously their advice is going to be comply with the law. But I don't think we necessarily need to break our cadence to meet the July 1st deadline per se.
I think similarly, it's a best practice to do it by July 1st, right? And you try your best, but considering all things that may occur before then or through that time period, I think, we'll do our
And part of
best.
this project has been getting to the point where we can start actually being proactive in policy review as opposed to constantly buried. I mean, the first policy committee meeting I went to in 2017, Dr. McMorrin showed up with a printout this thick and said, here's all the stuff that we're behind on that we need to work on. And we have still not met that sort of threshold from 5 years ago. But once we sort of hit the reset button like this, we'll be able to say, council's providing us quarterly updates. Here's what we need to do to be compliant and live in that sort of compliance cycle going forward.
Yeah, I mean, as Chris said, I mean, for years, we've been quite far off the mark. And since the administration will always follow the most current law, I would say that some new policies have a much more operational importance and would, might prompt communication to the whole community. I mean, if it's a major policy that's come down from the state or from the feds that needs to be changed, then that might require attention before one that's, probably less likely to require our attention in an operational sense.
I don't know if everybody had a chance to see the Shipment and Goodwin note, the spreadsheet that Sarah mentioned.
I don't think we were included on it originally.
Okay. And some of it,
I just sent it this morning. Sorry, Kathy.
No, that's okay. Cause I just had a chance to open it while we were on this call to see, just make sure I had it. And it is specific to our policy numbers, Region 9 policy numbers, but at the very bottom, there is an additional model policy. She said it's a new model policy as of May, this right now, May 2022, with the note that the board is required by July 1st, 2022 to have policies in the areas of advanced courses and challenging curriculum. This model policy satisfies this statutory requirement. So I raised that one just because, do we want to add that, review it, and add it to our first reading as we're going through as possible? And I know, Chris,
My hands are tied, but
Right.
I don't know what the policy, I haven't seen the policy. I don't know what it is. I don't know what
it's not linked here, so I don't think anybody's seen it.
I assume it's in the S&G portal somewhere that I don't have access to, but.
Right. We would have to go find that one. I believe that they made two other notes of policies that we had reviewed and they, I think, had since revised or updated. Hold on.
And I suggest that if we're going to consider the advanced course or program or challenging curriculum policy, that we tee it up to be jointly first read on May 24th and then adopted in the June cycle by the three boards. Otherwise, we're going to have disparate reading numbers on May 24th. Assuming it's an inoffensive policy.
So just so I understand, if you don't mind me clarifying, I just wanted to make sure that when we go on the 24th, instead of having just the second reading, we would also have a first reading of this potential policy or anything else we came to an agreement on.
Right.
Right.
I'm thinking
Okay.
probably just this one, a very pro forma 5 seconds on this policy, or a tri-board 5 seconds being 10 minutes, but.
It's worth targeting if we have to table it because we run out of time, we table because we run out of time.
Right.
I mean, it's asking a lot to say we drafted a policy in May, you need to adopt it by July, when most boards require at least 2 meetings to adopt a policy.
Right.
John and Chris, do we know what else is going to be the agenda for the joint meeting, the May joint meeting?
Always the healthy food certification. We're going to be awarding a food service contract. There's going to be contracts for central office administrators, I would assume. Dr. McKinnon will have a presentation. There's never a shortage of topics.
Okay, I'm just trying to like think about the time, like, we're going to be in that room for 4 hours. I mean, it's the first reading, so it's not like we have to spend
Right.
be all
Well,
of
there's
the-
also it's a second reading for most.
Second reading for the
Yeah.
meat. There's a lot here. Yeah.
I mean, that's where you get into the art of agenda setting and where you place things vis-a-vis people's level of exhaustion.
We will leave that to you, John, as chair of the joint meeting.
Thanks.
I've taken enough heat for extraordinarily long tri-board meetings I've been involved with.
All right. I'm getting an error as I try to copy the folder, but I'll figure it out. So probably reach out to Sarah.
I just wanted to mention, so going back to Shipment and Goodman's feedback that they sent to us, it was, they made 3 mentions about Title IX in the 4000 series. They said to review and update to reflect the most updated version of their model forms. So there's 3 notes that I believe we were just not reading the most current. So we may need to look at that, but we can do that.
Well, wasn't that the policy that was a recent policy adoption for us? And we had said, well, it's so recently adopted, we're going to stick with that one because a lot of work was spent.
Right.
But to Sarah's point, in Shipman's note that just came through, they do say review and update to reflect the most updated version of our model forms. Review and update to reflect the most updated version of our model regulation, and review and update to reflect the most updated version of our model policy and appendix. It sounds like they're saying we should, even though the standing policy is fairly new, we should go with theirs. And that wasn't the case for all of the comments, at least for the Region 9 list we sent. Like, sometimes they said, if retaining, do not adopt the Shipment and Goodwin model. So it wasn't consistently that answer, which makes me think that even though it was a relatively new policy, they would not approve it legally moving forward. I mean, they want us to take the new one.
Yeah, my guess is it's also complex. So
Right.
I think we wait. The other things that we're going to need to look at is where they list this policy is unnecessary and may be repealed.
Right.
So I think, again, that falls into it's complicated. Let's take some time and not rush it,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised by a lot of their comments. I just don't know that they're necessarily like relevant for where we are in the process, because we're going to have to when we tackle their policy on transportation, wherever it is, we're going to be doing it in contrast to what already exists.
Right. Yeah, that sounds right.
John, I don't know if it's helpful or not, but I downloaded the entire S&G model policy folder into
Yeah.
a zip. I
Yeah.
renamed it first reading and I re-uploaded it into that folder.
Great. Okay. So
that can lock it as the zip folder, and then you can figure out from there what you want to do with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think what I was hoping to do is to essentially snapshot as a separate thing. So we continue to work in the same files that we're using. We've just snapshotted them. So now we know this is what the sort of first read was.
And that's why I pulled down a zip of the current folder in its current state.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's a smart, creative solution to the errors that I've been getting. So I like that.
It allows us to at least continue right now, and you can manipulate it later.
Yeah, cool. So, is there anything else to go through? It seems like our disposition on the guidance is this is a good list for us to move forward with after we're done, right? This is a good list to sort of consider, and it, especially when it's attached to any of the things where we said it's complicated, we need to wait. It's like those become I don't know what the cadence is, whether it's quarterly or if it's like initially we're meeting monthly and then it becomes quarterly or whatever. but they become the topic of our first sort of regular meetings post the sort of approval of the large body of the manual.
The only thing I would add is, do we want to share the wellness policy with the wellness committee now? So that because that was a bigger
Right.
group effort, and
Right. And they're
so
meeting soon, right?
I believe they were meeting very soon.
Yes,
So
we are. We're meeting next week or the following week. I can confirm.
So I'm traveling for work part of next week, so I wouldn't be able to attend, but I don't know if Sarah could attend or if Chris could attend on behalf of the
Meeting
Yes,
joint.
is the 12th at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Is that live or Zoom?
It's live. But if Zoom makes it easier
can
for you,
zoom in.
Chris, we can
Right.
certainly do that.
I have an appointment at 1 then. Yes, I'm not going to be able to make that. The 12th, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Another member of, if Kathy or Cheryl could attend, maybe.
I could make that work.
I'll put it on my calendar and we can figure out when we get closer who's covering the.
Cool.
Thank you all.
all right.
And then the other thing that we needed to run by someone, hold on, pulling up our list here. Oh, was with Vicky Cram, we needed to talk about FMLA as well. So Cheryl and Kathy, what ended up, the discussion that I had with Chris and John briefly was that, I'd said, what was your thought process with FMLA and bringing that to first read? And the thought is that we'll have time to figure things out with Vicky and decide what to do between first and second read. So similarly to wellness, bringing it to wellness's attention, I think we have to bring this to Vicky's attention and say, here's where we're at. Can you explain to us what the current methodology is? How would this work, et cetera?
I think the goal of this committees generally between now and May 24th ought to be working through those sort of not quite ready for prime time policies for which there were addressable questions that weren't punt forever parking lot issues, so that we can come to the 24th with resolution and recommendation on those questions. That's slide 5 and 6 or whatever they were on.
Yeah. Yeah, it was slide 6.
Yeah.
Or yeah, it could, they could be on, frankly, any of the slides, but that could have been flagged, but yeah, where we needed input.
And are we proposing that on May 24th, the policies that get adopted are also sort of cleaned up with comments closed out, only track changes from first into second reading, and also sort of stylistically conformed, or are we okay to adopt them with the style confirmations coming after? As in the blank public schools or the district, the superintendent, the whatever, all of these sort of formatting issues.
I'll just speak for myself. I think by the time they get to second reading for approval, they should be filled in. I would have that be the second reading when they are actually approved for adoption or not, that we're approving and adopting the actual
written
policy as would be published.
Yeah.
Right. So then that just sort of gets to the question of who's doing that when and how, because there's a workflow component to this.
Yeah, I'm happy to partner with Sarah on that to sort of go through and sort of make sure that's right. But I think first we need guidance from this group, because I think we need a preface. And we've talked about the magical preface document that will, make all principal and head of school and he's and she's and they's right.
Mhm.
I think we need to talk about that as a group. And if we're able to do that next Friday,
Yep.
I think that gets us, that'll give Sarah and I everything we need to sort of make sure that work is ready by the 24th.
And I know we had left Dory with the question basically of when you say district versus board, do you mean things that are different, or is this just drafted by different people at different times? And if district, board, blank public school all means the same thing, we
Right.
should either say in the preface it all means the same thing, which is simpler than going through and fixing it all,
Yeah.
or try to conform where we spot it and still say in the beginning they all mean the same thing.
Yeah, yeah,
I
agreed.
will-
And
Oh, I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, all I was going to say is that whatever we come up with, we want to run it by Shipment too. What that preface page.
I didn't get the sense from Dory that was clarified. District, board. I think she saw it
Acknowledged.
as an issue. Like that's
Yeah.
right. She
Right.
recognized, ooh,
Right.
that's an issue.
Yeah.
And it has not been clarified. In fact, I got the impression that was work for them to do
Yeah.
in some cases.
Right. And that was my point, sort of calling out that it was still in their
Yeah.
Mhm.
lap. But I also don't want to get in the business of adopting policies without knowing.
What it
Because
means.
now we are endorsing a distinction in language, and we need to understand whether we're doing that intentionally or not.
Mhm.
Right. And the preface could allow us to kind of endorse according to the way we feel is right,
Right.
that language.
Right.
Yeah.
And if Shipment signs off on us saying these all have the same definition, then we
Right.
do that and we all rest a little easier.
Right.
So then it sounds like there's consensus that the presumption is that if we have this general preface, rather than spend the time to go through every single, whatever, all 80 policies, draft a comprehensive definition list, if you will, right? That would automatically say, in the event of any discrepancy, this intro section would prevail, right? And
Right.
then this group can come up with that proposed wording for Shipment to bless.
Right. Policy
Correct.
001.
Yeah.
And so the trick, I would love it if we could conform the language and make it all read consistently throughout. My concern is that every 90 days, we're going to get updates to shipment policies that
That's
revert
right.
back to
exactly
using
right.
the language differently. And unless
We-
they are willing to fix this issue broadly, we're just buying ourselves a headache, or future board members are going to have the same question we have, which is, why are they saying this differently?
Right. And the fork in the road that is created when you sort of say, oh, well, we're going to customize our version for something that you're going to get updates on, is a really bad trap to fall into.
Well, I think when we take this to first reading to Region 9, if there are blanks, the question will likely be raised, what's going in that blank?
Yeah.
And I think for Region 9, we need to be prepared to answer that question when we go to first reading.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
And
not
there's
have that discussion in the joint meeting when we're going to second. I don't know that we will,
I think
that
it's
needs to
fair
be
to
addressed.
I think where the one area where we might want to put some custom language basically is wherever it says the blank public schools,
Mhm.
replace that with the district.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's the Easton or Reading or Region 9 schools, or the
Right.
ER9s, which isn't true either. And you get into this
Right.
whole pedantic argument
Right.
about whether you're adopting a single
Right.
policy or not, or whether you really need three because they have to say three different
Right.
things for different districts. Like it's poke your eyes out time. So if
Right.
we just say district, then in the preface you could say it means
Right. The
respectively
district.
the Easton, Reading, or Region 9 district as applicable. And
Exactly.
you're done.
And exactly. And there's not really that many things outside of that specific question of fill in the name of the district, which we don't need to fill in the name of the district. These are the policies that are hosted on our website, and we can say the district. And that's as specific as we need to get.
And John, actually, I'm sorry to derail this a little bit. That triggered a comment that came up in my board meeting on Tuesday, which is the public has a right to understand what policies are being put forward for a
course.
first and second reading.
Yeah.
Short of killing a whole lot of trees, how are we going to provide sort of public access to that which has been read?
That's another reason why I want to talk to Sarah Scafani, because I think the plan is that they remain. I think this is what Jason did, Dr. McKinnon did in Oxford, is they actually have available to the public these Google Doc pages. So we would resolve all the comments and we would sort of all that work and make sure that all the sort of decisions are final and the blanks are filled in, and then that's pushed out to the public. Now, I'm wondering, can we do that now with, maybe there's a version that we can do where it's like, hey, we can hide all the comments and stuff because that's not sort of germane to that.
Right. If we could take the first reading folder, sanitized without the comments and the edits and things, and create a public link to that, I think a lot of people will feel comfortable / more comfortable about the process.
Yeah.
Though I would say if it's going to be shared with the public, I don't know that we should have blanks in that version.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I think it should be the policy as we are moving forward with it.
Yeah.
Or proposing to move forward with it. Because when there's, fill in the blank and links to XX policy, it looks.
I agree.
It doesn't look complete. I'm afraid it's fine for us as board members, but shared publicly, I think it should be filled in.
I mean, we've read model policies at board meetings that have been a complete draft nightmare.
Disaster.
It hasn't been the best look.
I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, of the 72 policies, whatever it is that were advanced for our first read, substantially all of them, like 55 to 65 of them, are already in a position where we can just do that cleanup.
Yeah.
There's the handful that we still need to kind of work through that slide 6 thing that aren't quite ready for prime time yet. But I don't think it's a problem to say, if John and Sarah want to start working on that project, that's great.
Yeah. And I think as a practice, and I think about this as a philosophy, it was sort of hard learned over the course of the last few years that when there is a vacuum for information, there are segments of the community who are going to assume the worst. And so if we have a spot somewhere in a document that's totally innocuous, that could be possibly interpreted in a way that is, it's just not right. That could be wrong for our students or our town. Well, we want to make sure that we're cutting that off at the pass. There's no reason to allow that ambiguity to sort of drive some of that swirl. So I'm highly supportive of let's get these first to the public as soon as possible to create transparency, make sure that there's no doubt about sort of what we're doing and why we're doing it. I don't want anybody to think like you guys are trying to pull a fast one. This is the slowest fast one I've ever seen, if you call that, right? Right, 2+ years. But also, I think that the ability for us to be ready, even to your point, Kathy, for that first reading, right? So I want to actually take a look, because right now we're kind of in the back of our minds assuming that there's a lot of this that is varied. That may be the case, but I'm starting to think more specifically about these policies, and I think it's overwhelmingly really simple stuff that is put in where they said they gave us a place to put in the name of our district to make us feel special, that this formal document has our name, and like, we don't need to feel special. We need this to work, and it works if we just say the district.
The other thing I was thinking is, do they really want us even meddling and placing words in? Do they want to control all of that?
Who's that?
I think it's
Shipment and
built.
Goodwin?
Shipment. It's built for us to fill in the blank and anywhere where there's brackets to make a decision. And I believe that through our process, we made decisions on the bracketed text. So I think we need to make sure that's indicated, per the comments and notes in our discussion during our meetings, and make sure that the blanks are filled in. If there's somewhere else. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm certainly not interested in paying Shipment and Goodwin hourly rates to replace blank public schools with the district.
Right.
Yeah, it's designed for us to do that, but in other places where it's the district versus the board, I think we're not doing that wordsmithing, because there's not a blank there, right? They chose a word, and until they've resolved on their side, the difference between, if there is any difference, those things, like we don't want to be in that business. It undermines the sort of the authority that comes with these policies coming from Shipment.
I do have, this is not to beat a dead horse, but I do have, and Sarah and Cheryl, please add to this. If we go to Region 9 as a first reading with district, the question is going to come up, I believe, as to which like, why aren't we saying Region 9? Why aren't we saying that? And maybe Sarah and Cheryl, you have a different point of view here, but I think that is going to likely come up, and we are going to have to address that before we even get into policies first reading. That, no matter how that's handled, I believe will be a discussion.
And I think that's an indictment of the Region 9 mindset, frankly.
I completely agree with that, Kathy, and my thought process there, Stephanie, not to put you and Jason on the spot. Jason, in communications with, I think, I don't know, all the board members, some board members, has a clear view on this. And again, not to obligate the administration to pick a process, if you will. I think it's important, and I'm happy to support the administration in making this very clearly articulated to any and all board members that ask. But I think that was very clear in my mind. And so I think it would be best coming from Jason in a public forum. Again, not the fact that he's not here, so I don't mean to put him on the spot in that regard, but I think it's very important.
Yeah.
But Kathy, your point is well taken. I completely agree with it, and I do not want to go down that rabbit hole at the Region 9 meeting, at any of our meetings. I do not want to go down that rabbit hole. So, if people feel very strongly about that, then I think we have to have that discussion in public setting and across the tri-board, and we can see why people feel strongly about that, and if the majority of the 21 want to go that same way. We have to be very strong about this.
But I can certainly have the conversation with Jason when he's in the office this afternoon. We can sort of talk about how he wants to manage that discussion.
And I don't know that it'll get to the tri-board. I think this will come up at our meeting on the 17th.
Right.
This will come up, I believe, in the context of a first reading of any policies.
I would argue that it is in some ways a function of how it's couched within that meeting on the 17th. This is our joint policy book. Nope. No, it's not. It's, it is Region 9's policy book. And we are working as much as possible in order to reduce the administrative burden on our central office staff and our leaders to pass 3 policy books that are the same, that have the same content. Because this is the Region 9 policy book, when it says the district, it means Region 9. And adding those words only complicates the administrative burden of differentiating every page of this policy, and it's unnecessary.
And of all the semi-regionalized collaborative cooperative districts across the state of Connecticut, the only single district of those 15 or 20 districts that is going to have this concern is the Region 9 school district. And I think we need to ask ourselves why.
So I agree, Kathy, if there's a way for us to reduce that, that swirl that can occur, like, we should do it. And I think it's just making sure that if for number one, is this Jason's position? Because I think that should and will hold a lot of weight. Number two, if it is Jason's position, how do we make sure that everyone's clear about why that is his position and why we agree with it? Oh, I just noticed the time. So I have to jump. Do we have other items?
I was just going to ask about our plan for moving forward would be on the next consecutive Fridays to work through those other issues to prepare them for resolving those issues for the second reading.
Yeah, I think what we had talked about is on next Friday's call, we are diving into the preface work.
Okay.
Does that work?
But we can't lose sight of those 5 or 6 we need to resolve questions policies too.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, John and Sarah, after you guys regroup, I'm happy, let me know. I'm happy to help,
Okay.
offline, and then we could do work on the side between now and next Friday. And then next Friday, we'll all hopefully be in a position to finalize what we want to recommend. That's kind of
And
what we're thinking
If
is.
you want me to take a shot at that prefatory language, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, please.
Of you.
Yes, please.
That would be wonderful.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Good,
Yeah,
give it to
and-
the attorney. Great, I like that idea.
I'll
And
do
if
it for
we
half the
can-
shipment rate.
Yeah, right.
I
If
can
we
help
can
with the typos and
circulate-
grammar.
If we can circulate and ask for individual responses rather than group responses, then we can get to the bulk of some potential edits that people may want to make and have them all in hand prior to the meeting. That would be helpful too. Because I feel like this could be some lengthy time to go through all of these things. So I think whatever we can do ahead of it would be good.
Mhm. And just to confirm, someone will send the wellness policy to the wellness committee chair. So that's being that those wheels are put in motion.
Mhm.
And
Stephanie has the policy.
Stephanie, you have it. You got that? Okay.
so you've got the con. And then regarding the Vicky Cram question, is that do we want to put those wheels in motion, or do we want to wait until we get into those policies more deeply at some point?
I mean, it can happen between first and second reading, or, it can happen now, but she's already aware of it. We've tagged her on it. So,
Okay. And then just lastly, Sarah and Cheryl, our plan is to share now our list, like Chris's list, that document with our board. Like we could do it today, I guess, right? Or in
Mhm.
Monday. I'm
Now
not
that
pressuring you, but just before our regular meeting on the 17th.
Yeah, we just needed Jason's blessing, which I received yesterday. So now we're good to go.
Sarah, let me know if you need any help with anything, but it sounds like you've got that one, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Let me know
I've
too.
got
I'm happy to, I don't have John's Google skills, but I'm learning, and I'm happy to do anything you need.
So I
I'm-
understand, Kathy and Sarah, is it your plan to advance to Region 9 the same documents, the same form that were advanced to Reading? Because they're going to say the blank public schools, they're going to say all sorts of stuff that isn't just the district yet.
I think we can advance the blank. I think we're going to have the discussion as to what's going to go in that blank.
Right.
And I think but that's slightly separate than what we share publicly, because I would not personally wouldn't support sharing documents publicly that have blanks in them.
I think you bring it forward as, here is what it is at first reading. Our plan between now and second reading is to conform them this way.
Yep.
Here are the open questions, please accept.
And then in my mind, the same conformed documents, if you will, would be the same for second reading for the boards, would be the same version that goes to the public.
right.
Right. In agreement.
And I think that preface is going to have a significant impact on comfort levels with what goes in that blank,
Mhm.
and an understanding of how this is all going to work in going forward in actual practice. So I think the preface is very important
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons, but especially but particularly in this discussion, in terms of this discussion as to how it affects what's in that blank.
Okay. Good. Any other discussion on our items in discussion and possible action? Okay. Then we'll look for committee member comment.
Move that we adjourn at 10:07.
Thank you. Absent objection, the Joint Policy Committee is adjourned at 10:07.
Great. And I move that we adjourn at 10:07 for Region 9 for our special policy committee meeting. Thank you.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Yeah. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.